questions. Questions orales. L'honorable.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition. The Prime Minister is not worth the cost. Now he's panicking. He's trying to save not only the carbon tax, but also his political career. And the Bloc is there to support him. The Bloc voted in favour of keeping the tax on home heating. And we learned in La Presse that the Bloc wants to keep the Liberals in power for another 2 years. We also learned in La Presse that there was a call between the Bloc Québécois leader and the Prime Minister, a call to protect and save this Liberal government's agenda. So, will they be transparent about all the conditions of this new costly coalition? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, as everyone in this room knows, I am always willing to work with whoever wants to do more to fight climate change, who wants to do more to help Canadian families through these difficult times. I'm very happy that the Bloc Québécois has recognized that the best way to fight climate change is to put a price on pollution and to help families with associated costs. And that's what we're doing. I regularly have conversations with the Bloc Québécois leader, but I haven't had any recently. The last time we talked, the Bloc leader and I, we talked about the Middle East and Israel. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
The Prime Minister is desperate to save his carbon tax, especially on heat. And he started by giving a temporary pause to some people in a region where he was plummeting in the polls and his caucus was revolting. But then he found that the entire country was in revolt and he needed a new coalition partner to save him from my common sense confidence vote to take the heat off, to take the tax off the heat. He got that support from the Bloc Québécois. We now learn that he has been in discussions with the Bloc to help him stay in power for 2 years. What did he promise the separatists for them to enter into this costly carbon tax coalition?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, contrary to the divisive rhetoric that the Leader of the Opposition is putting forward, the measures we announced on transitioning people on oil to heat pumps apply right across the country. The doubling of the rural top-up right across the country. We're going to continue to work with Canadians to phase out home heating oil, which is dirtier and more expensive. And I want to recognize that we are willing to work with anyone in this House who will step up in the fight against climate change. And I thank the Leader of the Bloc Québécois for continuing to be firm on building a better future for all our kids, on fighting for climate change, against climate change on this and in other occasions. I welcome all parliamentarians to stand up in the fight against climate change.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Now he's thanking the separatists for helping him save his carbon tax and support his plan to quadruple the tax on heat, gas, and groceries. This Prime Minister is playing a very dangerous game. First, he divided Canadians by giving a temporary pause to some people in a region where he was plummeting in the polls and his caucus was revolting. When all Canadians then revolted against this divisive plan, he's turned to the separatists who say that they are going to keep him in power for 2 years and that the Leader of the Bloc has had a call with the Prime Minister to do it. In the interest of transparency, will the Prime Minister reveal what he promised the separatists for them to join in this costly carbon tax coalition?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, the level of divisiveness and the rhetoric of the Leader of the Opposition is truly unfortunate. Mr. Speaker, the vast majority of Canadians, like the vast majority of members in this House of Commons, recognize that climate change is real, recognize we need to continue to step up in the fight against climate change, not just for the well-being of the planet and future generations, but for families' bottom lines, for families' jobs and careers as well, and we will continue to do that. As members of this party know, of the House of Commons know, I exchange regularly with leaders of different political parties. I haven't spoken recently with the Leader of the Bloc except on the issue of the Middle East, but I'm always open to talking to any party leader that wants to talk about fighting climate change.
L'honorable chef de l'opposition.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Divide and distract from the fact that Canadians, after 8 years of his government, cannot eat, heat, or house themselves. But in a strange way, he united all Canadians at the Premier's Conference, who all agree, all 10 of them unanimously disagree that the Prime Minister's approach to take the tax off temporarily for only some. They said that this federal carbon tax policy treats Canadians differently and they expect a change. Will the Prime Minister pull together all the premiers in an emergency carbon tax conference so that we can take the tax off and keep the heat on?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, the measures we announced a couple of weeks ago help any Canadian everywhere across the country to get off home heating oil towards using a heat pump, which is cleaner, less expensive, and better for our future. These are things that we've done right across the country. Only the Conservatives would think that taking serious action on climate change and supporting Canadians right across the country with affordability measures would be divisive. Well, it is divisive if you think that climate change is fake. But for everybody else other than the Conservative Party, we know that we can come together to fight climate change.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Canadians know that the only thing fake is this Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, today the NDP flip-flopped on its flip-flop. First, they voted 16 times in favor of the carbon tax on home heat. Then they voted to quadruple the tax. Then yesterday, they panicked and flip-flopped and voted for my plan to take the tax off home heating, admitting that they were wrong all along. And now today, they said they're in favor of the tax on home heat by refusing my amendment. So will the Prime Minister tell us at 2:26 p.m. what is the NDP position on the carbon tax right now?
Not certain if that has to do with the administration. That question has to do with the administration of the House. But I do see the Right Honourable Prime Minister rising to his feet. The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, what is clear is that the Conservatives are all ready to try and divide Canadians one against the other in any possible way they can, when the reality is the only division around climate change is that Conservative politicians still doubt whether it's real or not, and certainly don't think we should be doing anything to fight climate change. However, everybody else across the country, in all different parties, knows that it's a real issue that we're going to continue to step up and fight, unlike the Conservatives that continue to look to divide and hide from the reality of climate change.
Hear, hear.
The Honourable Member for Belleuil-Chambly. Mr. Speaker, what the opposition leader is talking about, this phone call, it never occurred. The only true thing that the member is saying is that we are separatist. The opposition leader, while we're talking about him, he spent $3,300 on Facebook ads between August and November. The Conservative Party spent $80,000. The Liberal Party spent $8,500, and the Prime Minister spent $20,000 on Facebook. Meanwhile, social networks are intimidating Quebec and Canadian media. How do they explain that? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, what's very clear is our political allegiances. Despite our political stripe, whether we're federalist or separatist, we always care about the environment and protecting children, and we will work with allies. Now, as for social networks and information shared with Canadians, we're trying to work very hard with Facebook and Google because they don't want to pay journalists for their work. We're going to continue to do everything that needs to be done to keep Canadians informed about that and about other issues, but we do have some work ahead of us.
L'honorable député.
The Honourable Member for Belleuil-Chambly. We want the government to take a strong stance. We would support a strong stance by the Government of Canada. A few days ago, we learned that over 500 people were laid off at TVA, TVA. 500 people lost their jobs because of social networks stealing all the ad revenue of legitimate media. Meanwhile, the Conservatives and the Liberal government are encouraging them by giving them dozens of thousands of dollars each and every month. What kind of message does that send to people? What kind of message does that send to Meta, who doesn't seem to respect anybody?
Le très honorable.
The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, we were extremely clear about how concerned we are by Meta's behavior in particular. Meta is indeed refusing to support our democracy. They are refusing to allow journalists to do their excellent and thorough work, which is essential to the proper functioning of our institutions and our democracy. We will continue to defend media against web giants that the Conservatives never seem to miss an occasion to defend. We will do everything that we can to keep Canadians informed throughout this. The Honourable Member for Burnaby South.
I know that the Prime Minister's plan on home heating was cynical and divisive, but the Conservatives are no better. They're more interested in playing games than actually helping people, because if they were genuine about helping people, they would support our plan to take GST off of home heating for all Canadians, to help people access clean and affordable ways to heat their home, and to make the big oil and gas companies pay for it. But we know that the corporate Conservatives won't ever stand up to big oil and gas, but will the Prime Minister support our plan to help all Canadians?
Hear, hear.
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, on this side of the House, we know that one of the things that helps Canadians is fighting climate change and supporting them in that fight against climate change. I know the NDP used to support phasing out coal. It is surprising to me that they are not supportive of phasing out heating oil, because that's exactly what we are doing. We're phasing out home heating oil because it is dirtier and more expensive for homes right across the country, and we're facilitating the delivery of heat pumps, including for free for low-income Canadians in provinces that choose to step up and participate. We're going to continue to fight climate change. I really wish the NDP were as unequivocal as that.
Order. Order. The Honourable Member from Burnaby South.
La question à laquelle on devrait...
Here is the question that we want an answer to. Will there be a break for all Canadians in our fight against climate change? All the Conservatives do is say slogans. Will their CEO friends allow them to vote to help Canadians? The Liberals want to pit regions against each other. Will the Prime Minister acknowledge his mistake and offer all Canadians a break on residential heating? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, we're offering more than just a break. We're offering thousands and millions of Canadians the opportunity to phase out heating oil because it's dirtier, it's more expensive, and there are too many low-income Canadians who currently depend on home heating oil. So we are going to help them transition to heat pumps. That's good policy. That's good policy for Canadians. That's a good policy to fight climate change, too. We are going to continue to be there to help Canadians, and we hope that all parliamentarians will join us.
The Honourable Member from Thornhill.
Prime Minister paused the paying of his carbon tax for 3% of families in region where he is plummeting in the polls. The Liberal minister from Newfoundland said if people in other regions wanted the same pause, that they should have elected Liberals. But people in York region elected Liberal MPs. In fact, 7 of them, and yet their constituents aren't getting the pause. Right. Yesterday, these MPs could have voted to take the tax off for the residents of York region, but they voted with the Prime Minister. So can anybody from York region stand up and explain their choice to leave their constituents in the cold?
The Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As I have said a number of times in this House, we have taken action that addresses affordability for particularly vulnerable Canadians. Heating oil costs 2 to 4 times that of natural gas. It accelerated by 75% in 2022, but we've done it in a manner that addresses the climate crisis at the same time and ensures affordability for people going forward. It will save $2,500 a year. It applies to people who live in every province and territory in this country, so long as provinces and territories step up. The shame in this chamber is that this party has no plan to address the climate crisis. I don't even know if they believe it, but they certainly don't act as though they actually think it's important.
The honourable member from Thornhill.
It certainly doesn't help the people in Newmarket, in Aurora, in Richmond Hill, in Woodbridge, in Markham, in Stouffville, or in North York. All of these communities got sold out by their Liberal MPs, and they can't even tell people why. They had a choice to stand with their communities, and instead they stood with the Prime Minister, and now they're hiding and hoping that everybody forgets. If these MPs won't listen to their constituents, won't advocate for them in the House of Commons, and won't even stand to defend their vote, then what are they even doing here?
The honourable minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This policy choice is about both affordability and about ensuring that we are addressing the climate crisis. I call on all provinces and territories to join us, certainly the Government of Ontario. Ontario has indicated an interest in moving forward with this, on co-delivering this project, which would be enormously important going forward. But I would say, Mr. Speaker, that yesterday the Leader of the Opposition essentially said that he will walk away from Canada's climate targets, eroding the Canada's credibility in the international community, eroding the ability of the world to address the climate crisis. This is enormously reckless, Mr. Speaker. It is an enormous risk for the future of our children. Shame on him.
The honourable member from Parry Sound Muskoka.
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister paused the paying of his carbon tax for 3% of Canadians in regions where he was plummeting in the polls. Then the Liberal Rural Affairs Minister said if people in other regions wanted the same pause, well, they should elect Liberals. But the people of Sudbury did elect a Liberal MP, and yet her constituents aren't getting a break. Yesterday, she could have voted to pause the carbon tax on all forms of home heating for the residents of Sudbury. But she voted no. Wow. Why is this government so committed to quadrupling their carbon tax that they forced the member for Sudbury to leave her constituents out in the cold?
Hear, hear. The honourable minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We have a serious plan, real policy that addresses affordability, but also addresses the climate crisis. The Leader of the official opposition has no plan. He mouths taglines like technology, not taxes. These coming from a guy who actually has zero background in technology, zero background in business. This coming from somebody who has been opposing the deployment of offshore wind technology through the passage of Bill C-49, something that is actually supported by the Conservative Premier of Nova Scotia and the Premier of Newfoundland and Labrador. Shame on them, having no plan for climate change, having no plan for the economy of the future.
I'm having some difficulty hearing members ask questions and to give answers. I would ask, please, that you do not exchange or engage in conversations across the aisle until you have the floor. The honourable member from Parry Sound Muskoka.
Well, just this morning, the Environment Commissioner confirmed that this government's so-called climate plan is nothing more than a punishing tax on heat, gas, and groceries. And after yesterday's vote, it is crystal clear that this NDP Liberal government has no plan to make life more affordable either. Yesterday, the member for Sault Ste. Marie could have voted to pause the carbon tax on home heating for all the residents of the Soo and all of Northern Ontario. But he voted no. Why is this government so committed to quadrupling the carbon tax that they forced the member for Sault Ste. Marie to leave his constituents out in the cold?
The honourable minister.
Mr. Speaker, there is an equity thing that's happening here. Treating all folks equally, when they start out unequal, that just perpetuates an inequality. It costs 4 times as much to heat your home on heating oil as it does natural gas, and that is a particular problem when you live in a region like me that does not have access to natural gas. Let us pick up for those people hardest hit, Mr. Speaker. Let's make sure that they get the break that they deserve. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Colleagues, I'm going to ask the members from South Shore St. Margaret's, please, and his neighbor to please take the floor when a question comes to you, and then we can listen to the answer without any problems. The honourable member from Kenora.
The Prime Minister has paused the paying of his carbon tax for 3% of families in areas where he is plummeting in the polls. And the Liberal Rural Affairs Minister says if others wanted a similar pause, well, they should have elected more Liberals. Mr. Speaker, the people of Thunder Bay Rainy River did elect a Liberal MP, yet they are not seeing this pause. And just yesterday, that member had an opportunity to vote to take the tax off and keep the heat on, but he voted against our common sense motion. So, Mr. Speaker, why is this government so committed to quadrupling the carbon tax that the member from Thunder Bay Rainy River left the people of Northern Ontario outside in the cold?
The Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As I have said before, we put forward a plan that addresses affordability in the long term for vulnerable Canadians who are suffering from high costs associated with home heating oil that has accelerated significantly in the last 2 years, but done it in a manner that is consistent with the fight against climate change, a fight that is not just Canadian, but is happening in countries around the world. I would say, Mr. Speaker, that it is the height of hypocrisy for the member opposite to be talking about this, about a price on pollution that they endorsed in their campaign platform and was part of the basis on which he was elected to this House.
The honourable member from Kenora.
Mr. Speaker, they have absolutely no plan for affordability after 8 years, which must be why the Prime Minister has paused his carbon tax paying for 3% of families. But people in Thunder Bay Superior North want to know why their MP, a Liberal minister, wasn't able to get the same pause for people across Northern Ontario. And just yesterday, she had the opportunity to vote to keep the heat on and take the tax off for people across Northern Ontario. So again, Mr. Speaker, why is this government so committed to quadrupling their carbon tax that the member from Thunder Bay Superior North was forced to leave the people of Northern Ontario out in the cold?
The honourable member, the honourable minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As I've said a number of times, it is shameful that the party opposite has no plan to address a crisis that is a crisis facing all of humanity. But I would tell you, in the modern age, having a recognition and acceptance of the realities of climate change is critical to having an economic plan that can be relevant for the future. What we hear is the Leader of the Opposition will cancel the Volkswagen battery manufacturing plant, that he opposes offshore wind and hydrogen development in Newfoundland and Nova Scotia, that he would get rid of the Canada Infrastructure Bank, that would eliminate the small modular reactor project at Darlington. He is opposed to everything, and at the end of the day, he has no plan for the economy and he has no plan for the environment. There you go.
J'invite tous les députés.
I ask all members to please follow your whip's signals in order to keep calm here in this place. The honourable member for Drummond. Mr. Speaker, 547 layoffs at TVA last week. It was the darkest day in the history of our TV industry. The federal government must realize that C11 and C18 will not be enough. The government must announce a $50 million emergency fund for news media, and the government must convene a General Assembly no later than this spring with all industry stakeholders to find long-term solutions to ensure the survival of the media. The future will be shaped by what we do right now. Will the minister create an emergency fund? And will the minister convene a stakeholder meeting?
L'honorable ministre du Patrimoine canadien.
The Honourable Canadian Heritage Minister. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Now, of course, there has been a crisis in the media over the past few years, and we have seen the impact of that crisis on media across the country. That's why we've implemented programs to help. I'm, of course, very concerned about the announcement of the 547 layoffs. We're working on many different options which are on the table, and we're looking into everything we can do to support the media. But the Conservatives have systematically blocked us from modernizing our laws. If we had been able to modernize the Broadcasting Act in 2020, the first time we tabled the bill, then there might not be these layoffs happening today. So the Conservatives are not helping, Mr. Speaker. The honourable member for Lac-Saint-Jean. Mr. Speaker, the Bloc Québécois supports successful immigration. We've said so loud and clear. That's why we want immigrants to be able to find housing. We want them to have access to a family doctor. We want their children to go to school in nice classrooms and to receive all of the educational support that they need. We want them to be able to learn French because that is the key to succeeding in Quebec. That's what integration capacity is all about, Mr. Speaker. That's what we mean. Will the Liberals finally realize that they are jeopardizing this by setting immigration targets that are totally out of sync with our integration capacity? The Honourable Minister. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I thank our colleague for bringing up the very important and relevant issue of housing today. Today, we announced that the CMHC will build 28,000 new housing units over the next 5 years, including 5,000 affordable units. In fact, this has been accomplished over the past 5 years, and it's twice what has been accomplished over the past 30 years. So this is what we can do when we work together with not-for-profits, municipalities, and the federal government. All levels of government and all groups can work together to make more affordable housing units for more people in Canada. The honourable member for Lac-Saint-Jean. Mr. Speaker, the Liberals don't have a clue about Quebec's integration capacity. Why didn't they consult Quebec before developing their immigration levels? And in addition to refusing to consult Quebec's government, they refused to consult with organizations that don't have a Canada-wide mandate. They refuse to speak to Quebecers. They refuse to speak to Quebec. So it's thus very unsurprising that their immigration levels are totally out of sync with our integration capacity. The Honourable Minister. The member across the way is disconnected not only from Quebecers, but also from the news. Today, we heard news from Quebec, and the only way to fix the labor shortage is through immigration. That's one of the main solutions. Quebec's GDP is lower than expected because of labor shortage, lack of workers, and we need immigration to fix that. Successful immigration, of course. The honourable member for Charlebourg, Haute-Saint-Charles. Mr. Speaker, the Bloc Québécois separatists joined the Liberals yesterday in voting against our motion to remove the carbon tax for home heating for all Canadians. Yet, the Premier of Quebec signed a declaration with all other provinces to support our initiative. So the Bloc Québécois is working against the Premier of Quebec and for the Prime Minister of Canada. Who would have thought? What concessions did the Bloc Québécois get to keep this incompetent and costly Prime Minister in power? The Honourable Minister. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I don't know about you, but as for me, I'm a big fan of Infoman. And last week, Infoman did a segment on the Conservative Party of Canada's half-truths. They mentioned half-truths twice in their show. So Infoman determined that the Conservatives' claims are false. The Conservatives claim that the carbon tax has a 16% impact on carbon tax, but that is in fact false. It's 0.15%. Factually speaking. So that's a really great episode of Infoman with conservative untruths, and I recommend it to everyone. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The honourable member for Charlebourg, Haute-Saint-Charles. Mr. Speaker, this is quite funny. Infoman is now leading the government's future. After 8 years of this Liberal government, though, Mr. Speaker, a new coalition was formed yesterday, a Bloc Liberal coalition. We were already tired of the bloc of the Liberal NDP coalition. Now there is another coalition, a separatist, independentist, federalist coalition, the Bloc Liberal coalition. The Bloc is supporting the Liberal Party so that they can stay in power for another 2 years. Now this government is known for its extravagant spending, and we want to know what the Bloc Québécois got in exchange for making this deal with the Liberal Party. The Honourable Environment Minister. Well, Mr. Speaker, it's true that there is a coalition in this House. The Liberal Party of Canada, the Bloc Québécois, the Green Party, and the New Democratic Party are all in this House, and all these parties believe that climate change is an existential threat. There is one party in this House that doesn't believe that, and that's the Conservative Party. So there are 4 parties in this House which believe that we need to take action against climate change, that we need to put a price on pollution, that we need to promote green energy, clean energy, and electrification of transports, and there's only one party in this House that doesn't believe in that, and that is the Conservative Party of Canada. The Honourable Member for Lévis-Lotbinière. Mr. Speaker, it costs a lot to vote Bloc, and they demonstrated that once again yesterday. Yesterday, the new Bloc Liberal Costly Coalition voted against our common sense motion, which would have allowed Canadians across the country to keep warm in winter. We cannot say it often enough. They voted together to drastically increase the carbon tax at the expense of Canadians. They are not worth the cost. It's costly to vote for the Bloc, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, what concessions did the Bloc Québécois obtain in exchange for keeping this incompetent Prime Minister in power? The Honourable Minister. What is he talking about? Where was our colleague this summer when rivers were overflowing, when there were wildfires? Where was he this summer when people were displaced all over the place, Mr. Speaker? The Conservatives and their backward policies, they refuse to believe in climate change. They're climate change deniers. They want to move Canada backwards all the way back to the Stone Age.
Before we listen to the next question from the member for Lévis-Lotbinière, I would like to remind the member for Portneuf-Jacques-Cartier that his voice is rather loud, and it's important to keep his voice under control before he rises to speak in the House of Commons and is recognized. The honourable member for Lévis-Lotbinière. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. After 8 years of this incompetent Prime Minister, he's found a new partner. Yesterday, the new costly Bloc Liberal coalition voted to maintain the carbon tax on home heating for all Canadians. It's truly shameful. Mr. Speaker, for a second time, what concession did the Bloc Québécois obtain to keep this incompetent Prime Minister in power? The Honourable Minister. Mr. Speaker, we won't take any lessons from people who thinks that humans and dinosaurs lived at the same time and that TV shows like the Flintstones are documentaries. We are going to fight climate change, and the Conservatives want to make us take a step back on the environment, on firearms, and bring us back to the Stone Age. The Honourable Member for Rosemont-la-Petite-Patrie. Mr. Speaker, endless announcements, the photo ops and rhetoric, but for all their talk, the Environment Commissioner has given the Liberals a failing grade in the climate change fight. Canada is going to miss its target, not least because we're still waiting for the emissions cap for the oil and gas sector. Under the Liberals, we're giving more public money to fossil fuels than any other G20 country. That's quite a feat. When will the Liberals wake up and take this crisis seriously? When the planet goes up in smoke? The Honourable Minister. Mr. Speaker, if my honourable colleague took the time to listen to the Commissioner of the Environment's press release, he said that the last year's plan is the best plan to fight climate change in the history of this country. I didn't say that. It's the Environment Commissioner that did. Should we do more to fight climate change? Of course. Would I be pleased to work with him and the Bloc and the Green Party to allow Canada to go faster and further on the fight against climate change? Yes. Despite what they're saying, yes.
The honourable member from Vancouver East.
The Liberals are out of touch with Canadians struggling to find a home that they can afford. They just handed over 6 parcels of federal land to wealthy developers, and only a small fraction of the homes built will be affordable. We're in a housing crisis. Rent is through the roof. Canadians are having to make impossible choices. Some end up living in cars or on the street. Canada needs at least 2 million nonprofit homes. So why are the Liberals putting profits over people having an affordable home yet again?
The Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you to our colleague for raising the importance of investing in more housing. The good news is that we've just done that this morning. So this morning, with Canada Lands Company, we announced the construction of 28,000 additional new homes in the next 5 years. 20% of them, at least, will be affordable homes, which is 5 times the amount of affordable homes that we have constructed in the last 30 years. Mr. Speaker, there is more to do, including with non-profit housing providers. We're going to do that.
Bravo.
The honourable member from Yukon.
Mr. Speaker, even as weather, high prices and tough economic times, they remain deeply concerned about climate change. That's why Yukoners welcome actions from our government to reduce fossil fuel emissions while conserving energy and reducing costs. Contrary to a common misconception, Yukon-based studies have shown that heat pumps can operate efficiently in very cold climates. The Prime Minister has invited all interested provinces and territories to join the co-delivery program for heat pumps. Can the Minister of Natural Resources update the House on the progress in bringing this program to my riding in the Yukon?
The Honourable Minister of Natural Resources.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I do want to thank my colleague from Yukon for the question and his tireless advocacy for his constituents. Heat pumps have been well tested and adopted in northern climates for years. That is why we are working to deploy more cold climate heat pumps across the territory to reduce ongoing energy bills and to reduce emissions. In fact, heating oil actually serves over 50% of the population in Yukon, making it a pressing issue of affordability and climate. I had a conversation recently with the Premier of Yukon. He is extremely interested in moving forward on a joint delivery, and I expect that we will have good things to say very soon.
Then I have
the honourable member for Portneuf, Jacques Cartier. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Yesterday, we saw the true colours of the Bloc. Once again, they let Quebecers down by voting with the Liberals. And when we say it costs a lot to vote Bloc, we saw the proof once again yesterday. Voting against the application of the tax break to all forms of residential heating in Canada for all Canadians, well, the Bloc voted against it. Incredible. This costly new Bloc Liberal coalition is doing nothing good for Quebec. What concessions did the Prime Minister make to the Bloc to hold on to power for another 2 years? The Honourable Minister of the Environment. Last week, the Honourable colleague asked what my former Greenpeace colleagues thought of my work, and then he thought what Équiterre thought about it. And here's what they said. In terms of our plan, it's the first time that we have such a detailed strategy to attain our targets that we set. David Suzuki said, this plan has the best chance of success of any other previous Canadian plan. Greenpeace, for the first time, a climate plan in Canada sees the oil and gas sector significantly reducing its emissions. What is the Conservatives' plan? I don't see it.
The honourable member from Foothills.
The Prime Minister's Christmas gift to 97% of Canadians. Merry Christmas. You're going to have a carbon tax in your home heating this winter. The Prime Minister literally gave Canadians a lump of coal by voting against a common-sense Conservative motion to take the tax off and keep the heat on. Now, we thought the Liberal NDP's carbon tax coalition was bad, but there's a new addition to the carbon tax naughty list. The Bloc joined the Liberals and voted to keep the carbon tax on home heating this winter. Which gift did the Prime Minister leave under the separatist tree to protect his government for 2 more years?
The Honourable Minister for Natural Resources.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As I've said a number of times, it is important to actually have a plan to address critical affordability issues in a long-term way, but also to continue to address the climate crisis. Those are the measures that we have put into place. I have to say again that I do find it the height of hypocrisy that my honourable colleague across the way, who ran on a platform that included putting a price on pollution, gets up in the House today and actually says what he's saying. It is the height of hypocrisy.
The honourable member from Foothills.
The Prime Minister joined the separatists to divide Canadians. Those Canadians will have to pay a carbon tax on their home heating over the winter, and 3% of Canadians who will get a pause on the pain. It's clear that the Liberals and the Bloc, their Christmas gift to Canadians is to punish families for heating their homes this winter. They voted against a common-sense Conservative motion to take the tax off for every single Canadian. Again, what Christmas wish did the Prime Minister grant the separatists for the Liberals to avoid an election on the carbon tax?
The Honourable Minister for Natural Resources.
You know, Mr. Speaker, I think every party in this House actually is concerned about affordability issues, but the only party in this House that does not care about the climate crisis is the Conservative Party of Canada. The only party that actually has no plan to address it and doesn't even believe that climate change is real. Mr. Speaker, yesterday, the Leader of the Opposition essentially said he would walk away from Canada's climate targets, walk away from every member of the international community. He would walk away from our children's future, and he would walk away from a clean economy that will actually create jobs and economic opportunity across the country. Shame on him.
The honourable member from South Shore, St. Margaret's.
After 8 years, the revolting Atlantic Caucus and the panicking, plummeting Prime Minister now have 2 coalitions with which to flip Canadians the bird. The costly coalition with the NDP to drive the cost of everything up. Unfortunately, Canadians know too much about that. The other, according to the Quebec media, is with the separatist Bloc, who committed to keep the Liberals in power for another 2 years. The costly coalition Prime Minister is not worth the cost. Will the Prime Minister release his full carbon tax coalition agreement with the separatist Bloc?
The Honourable Minister for Natural Resources.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I think my honourable friend across the way used the word revolting. You know what is revolting? Are the tactics, the circus act that is going on in the Natural Resources Committee, blocking the passage of Bill C-49. It is endangering the health and safety of the translators in that committee. It is an enormous waste of taxpayers' money. It is opposing the Premier of Nova Scotia, the Conservative Premier of Nova Scotia, and the Premier of Newfoundland and Labrador. It will create jobs and economic opportunity for the future in a manner that is consistent with fighting the climate crisis. Shame on him.
The Honourable Member for Beauport, Côte-Beaupré, Île d'Orléans, Charlevoix. Mr. Speaker, the situation is very serious in Beauport, Côte-Beaupré. Here, 142 SMEs have announced they will go bankrupt if the federal government does not postpone CEBA repayment without loss of the subsidy. It's the same across the National Capital Region as well. While the Liberals are asleep at the switch, the Conservatives are defending oil. Our local small businesses are on the verge of bankruptcy. When will the government finally give them the 1-year deferral they need? The Honourable Minister. Mr. Speaker, I would like to inform my honourable colleague that roughly 9 million companies benefited from CEBA, and that is why we announced an extension of 1 year of the deadline for refund and greater flexibility in terms of financing. And this is in addition to the increase to the CCB and to the $10 a day daycare. This will allow more women to remain in the workplace. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Honourable Member for Beauport-Limoilou. Mr. Speaker, there is going to be a wave of small business bankruptcies if the federal government does not defer repayment of the CEBA loans without the loss of the subsidy. According to the Insolvency Professionals Association, last quarter, more companies filed for insolvency than in the last 10 years. In Beauport-Limoilou alone, 154 businesses have declared bankruptcy. How can the Liberals sacrifice them when all they're asking for is a 1 year postponement, not 18 days? The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister, Minister of Finance. Mr. Speaker, we are proud to have created this program, which allowed us to provide $40 million to small businesses in Canada during the serious challenges they were facing. And I'd like to thank our partners for supporting these crucial programs, even though the Conservatives said our pandemic support wasn't good. What's important today is to underscore that small businesses now have until December 31st, 2026 to repay.
From Kelowna Lake Country.
Mr. Speaker, yesterday the Liberals voted down our common sense Conservative motion to axe the carbon tax on all forms of home heating for all Canadians. Now, the NDP leader said his NDP MPs would be supporting our Conservative motion to keep the heat on. However, not all British Columbia NDP MPs voted to take the carbon tax off. Now, after 8 years of this NDP Liberal government, this Prime Minister is just not worth the cost. Will the Prime Minister quit forcing British Columbians' rates on British Columbia for the carbon tax rates, which he plans to quadruple on home heating?
The Honourable Minister of Natural Resources.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As I have been saying, we have a plan to ensure long-term affordability for particularly vulnerable Canadians. The cost of heating oil is 2 to 4 times that of natural gas, depending on which province you live in. It is accelerated over 75% in 2022. It is a plan that actually addresses that in a way that will give savings to people over the long term. It will do it in a manner that fights climate change. I had the opportunity to speak with Premier Eby about it last week, and I believe that the people in British Columbia will have access to exactly the same proposal as everywhere else.
The Honourable Member from Lethbridge.
The Prime Minister paused the paying of his carbon tax on 3% of Canadian families in the areas where his polls were the lowest. The Liberal Rural Affairs Minister said this. She said that if people in other regions wanted to see a pause as well, then they needed to vote Liberal. But the people in Calgary Skyview did vote for a Liberal Member of Parliament, and yesterday he could have voted to keep the heat on and take the tax off, but instead he voted no to the people of Calgary Skyview. So why is this government so hell-bent on quadrupling their carbon tax that the member from Calgary Skyview left his constituents out in the cold?
Good.
The Honourable Minister for Natural Resources.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As I have said, we are moving forward on a program that will ensure long-term affordability for people who utilize heating oil, do so in a manner that is consistent with addressing climate change. I have reached out to my counterpart in the government of Alberta, and we will be having conversations about how Alberta can participate in this project moving forward. But I would say once again that it is time, and I think Canadians are expecting the Conservative Party to be able to at least tell folks that they believe in climate change, they have a plan for addressing the the climate crisis in a manner that is consistent with long-term economic prosperity and affordability.
Order. Colleagues, I wasn't able to hear who had said that comment, but every member who is recognized by the floor to be able to speak has the right to do so until that time has expired, and the Speaker will let that person know. The honourable member from Lethbridge.
So what I heard from the member opposite is that this government is committed to picking winners and losers, and the winners are the 3% that use oil to heat their homes. They won't have to pay a carbon tax for the next 3 years, but the rest of Canada will. When the Minister for Rural Affairs was asked about this, she said, well, they just need to vote more Liberals in place and then we'll give them our attention, referring to those in other parts of the country, of course. Now, for those that live in the constituency of Edmonton Centre, they did elect a Liberal Member of Parliament, and yet they were not showing that favoritism. They were not showing the benefit of having the carbon tax removed. And so my question is simple. Why is this government so hell-bent that the people of Edmonton Centre still have to pay the carbon tax on their home heating?
And again, I'm going to obviously offer the Minister an opportunity to respond, but I'll ask all members that I'm quite aware of the time that members have to pose and to respond to their questions. I politely decline their reminders as to how to do that. The Honourable Minister for Health.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. And of course, the members opposite know that more than 8 out of 10 Canadians get more back than they pay. But why are we hell-bent on this? Because our planet demands it. Mr. Speaker, 15,000, that's the number of Canadians who died prematurely as a result of air pollution in the country. That cost $114 billion. It is escalating. If we refuse to take action on this, not only do we have a moral and fiscal imperative, but we have an obligation to ensure the party opposite doesn't return to attacking climate policies across the world and move back to an aggressive state where we cease making the project on climate action, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Pontiac. Mr. Speaker, more than 400,000 Quebecers still use home heating oil. Mr. Speaker, Quebecers are ready for the green transition, but not everyone has the means to replace their heater. And that is why programs like the Canada's Green Homes program and the affordable oil subsidy for heat pumps are very important. Can the Minister of the Environment tell us how these programs are used and how these programs can be enhanced in Quebec? The Honourable Minister of the Environment and Climate Change. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to thank my honourable colleague for her question. We know that home heating oil is the most expensive type of oil and has one that has seen the highest increase in recent years. Our heat pump program wants to save every family that has one $2,500 a year. And we're working with provinces to implement this program as quickly as possible to eliminate home heating oil across the country.
The Honourable Member from Selkirk Interlake Eastmain.
Manitoba's new NDP Premier has joined the chorus calling on these Liberals to pause the carbon tax. After 8 long years, everyone knows that this Prime Minister is just not worth the cost, and his Liberal MPs in Winnipeg are failing Manitobans. Yesterday, the member for Winnipeg North could have voted to take the tax off and keep the heat on for Manitobans, but instead he voted to leave his constituents out in the cold. And now these Liberals want to quadruple the carbon tax. Why does the member from Winnipeg North always follow orders from his Prime Minister at the expense of his own constituents?
The Honourable Minister for Natural Resources.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As I've said a number of times, this is a policy that is about addressing affordability for folks who actually are suffering from the fact that heating oil is a much more expensive way to heat your home. We do this in a manner that actually will enable us to continue the fight against climate change and help folks in the long term with affordability concerns. I would tell you that we have had discussions with the government of Manitoba. I look forward to being able to move forward on a joint basis with the government of Manitoba, and I'm pleased to see the government in Manitoba actually recognize the existence of climate change, something that the Honourable Opposition does not do.
The honourable member from Provencher.
After 8 years, we now have the socialists, the separatists, and this Prime Minister who's just not worth the cost. They're all part of this costly carbon tax coalition that is leaving Canadians out in the cold. The Rural Affairs Minister recently told Manitobans that if they wanted the tax break, they had to elect more Liberals. Well, guess what? The folks in St. Boniface, St. Vital did elect a Liberal, and they're still paying the carbon tax. Yesterday, he had a chance to vote to keep the tax off and the heat on for his constituents. Why did that member choose to leave the members of St. Boniface, St. Vital in the cold?
I would like to remind all members in their preparation of questions that the questions should be directed towards the government or the parliamentary secretaries, anything that is, or to committee chairs, for the purposes of related to the business of the government or of the House. That a question to a member is not one that is normally recognized. I think I saw a minister standing up on this issue, but if there is no minister standing up, the minister is standing up. If the minister wishes to answer this question, the minister certainly can. The Minister for Environment and Climate Change.
We're talking, Mr. Speaker, so I was sitting. I'm a Liberal and a proud socialist, Mr. Speaker, but this reminds me of a certain quote from Prime Minister Harper, who talked about the fight against climate change as a socialist plot. That's what the Conservative Party, and here it is, you have it again, Mr. Speaker. They do not believe that climate change is an issue. They do not believe we should do anything about it. They oppose electrification of transportation. They oppose deals like Volkswagen, Stellantis, and Nordvolt. They oppose wind development off the shores of Newfoundland and Nova Scotia, Mr. Speaker. They have no plan to fight climate change. They have no plan for the economy. They have no plan for the future of Canada. Bravo!
The honourable member from Flamborough-Glenbrook.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The leader of the NDP said his caucus would be voting against the divisive decision by the Prime Minister to pause the payment of the carbon tax for just 3% of Canadians while doing nothing for the rest. However, in yesterday's vote, the member from Hamilton Centre didn't even bother to vote. If the NDP member from Hamilton Centre won't do his job, Conservatives will. Will the Prime Minister quit forcing Ontarians to pay a quadrupled carbon tax on their home heating?
The Honourable
Will the Prime Minister? We ask the Prime Minister.
So I would like to just point out that question, although the preamble dealt with a member who is not of the government, the final part of the question, and that sort of hybrid question, was directed towards the Prime Minister. So the honourable Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, if that member opposite is so concerned about helping Ontarians, then he should be asking the Premier of Ontario to join the program to provide free heat pumps to the hundreds of thousands of Ontarians who would qualify, as he knows, and as every member in this House full well knows, this is a program that applies across the country to transition folks away from home heating oil so that they don't have dirty, more expensive ways to heat their home. We can do this for cheaper, and we can help Canadians both with affordability and the existential threat of fighting climate change, something that Conservatives continue to deny. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Yeah, very good.
The honourable member from West Vancouver, Sunshine Coast, Sea to Sky Country.
Mr. Speaker, 85,000 British Columbians still rely on oil to heat their homes, an extremely polluting fuel that is up to 4 times as expensive as natural gas. Recently, the Government of Canada announced a new affordability package that will help Canadians ditch expensive and polluting oil furnaces for heat pumps that will save them money on their home heating bills and fight climate change. Recently, BC's Premier David Eby was seen at the Premier's meeting proudly donning an I Love Heat Pump shirt. Can the Minister of Energy and Natural Resources provide an update to this House on the progress being made to bring this important affordability measure for British Columbians?
The Honourable Minister for Natural Resources.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I do want to acknowledge the question from my colleague and my neighbour, and recognize his ongoing advocacy for the people and the environment of West Vancouver, Sunshine Coast, Sea to Sky Country. Canada works best when Canadians work together. We are reaching out proactively to every province and territory to discuss participation in this important program to address affordability issues in a manner consistent with fighting climate change. We have had very good discussions with Premier Eby and Minister Osborne, and I expect we will have good things to say for the people of British Columbia in the very near term.
The honourable member from Winnipeg Centre.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Winnipeg's Christmas Cheer Board is anticipating record demand for their hampers due to the cost of living crisis. 19,000 requests so far this year. And while big corporations are jacking up food prices, the Liberals throw up their hands, and the Conservative leader, the corporate champion from Carleton, stays silent. The Christmas Cheer Board doesn't know if they can meet this demand for help. Will the government support the NDP's bill to lower food costs and give Winnipeg families the help they need? Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
I'd like to remind all members that referring to a particular member using a mock title is not considered to be parliamentary. I see the minister standing up to answer this question. The Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I appreciate the question from my colleague. We know right now that many Canadians are having a hard time putting food on the table, and that's exactly why we continue to do the hard work on this side of the House to support Canadian families and organizations doing that work, whether that's from the Community Services Recovery Fund or whether that's the work that we're doing to develop the national school food policy amongst our partners. We are here to support Canadian families, Mr. Speaker. Thank you.
The honourable member from Nunavut.
The gap for First Nations infrastructure is at $350 billion. The government committed to end the gap for First Nations by 2030, but the Liberals have spent less than 3% of what is needed. This does not even include funding for Métis and Inuit, which would make the gap even more extreme. Indigenous communities remain neglected despite the calls for actions. When will this government recognize Indigenous people's capacity and work with them to fill these gaps?
The Honourable Minister.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and I thank my colleague from Nunavut for this really important question. In fact, after a decade under the Harper government of no investments in First Nations communities, our government got to work with First Nations partners to start to close that infrastructure gap on things like clean water, Mr. Speaker, boil water advisories that have been left unattended for a decade, on things like housing, Mr. Speaker, community centres, health centres and schools. Mr. Speaker, I agree with the member opposite. The gap is huge, but we are making progress with Indigenous leadership, and I'm very proud of that.
And with that, we come to the end of question period. I do see a point of order. The honourable member from Provencher.
Speaker, you know, after I asked my question, you indicated that the questions should be directed through you to a minister of the Crown and not just to any random Liberal. Well, in fact, I was asking my question to the member of St. Boniface St. Vital, who is a minister of the Crown. He's a minister of Northern Affairs, who did not vote in favor of reducing home heating bills for his constituents. And so it was actually a minute.
I'd like to thank. I would like to thank the member from Provencher for pointing that out. And as Speaker, I'd like